You think you know the road? You've driven it 1,000 times, a familiar ribbon of tarmac, spooling out into the darkness. It's a space of transit, a non-place between where you were and where you're going. You think it is safe at night. The world outside the windscreen is a blur of shadow and fleeting light, but inside this metal and glass cocoon, you are the master of your small universe. The engine hums a lullaby of control. You will think again. Because the road has its own rules, its own secrets, and sometimes it asks for a toll you're not prepared to pay. There is a comfort in the hum of tires on asphalt, a steady rhythm that can soothe the weary mind. It's a promise of progress, of arrival. And then something breaks it. A single, discordant note in the symphony of the night. Story 1. The Hitchhiker on Route 9. It was terribly late, the kind of late that feels borrowed from the next day. A thin sliver of moon offered little comfort, hanging like a pale scar in the inky sky. Mark drove alone. His world shrunk to the twin beams of his headlights, cutting through the oppressive dark of Route 9. Sales manager, regular bloke, just heading home from a client dinner that had dragged on for hours. He was a man of routines and spreadsheets, someone who believed in cause and effect, in the predictable order of things. Then a silhouette at the roadside materializing from the gloom as if painted there. A young man with a dark duffel bag slung over his shoulder, thumb half-heartedly extended. As Mark's headlights swept over him, he saw a face no older than 20, gaunt, with damp hair plastered to his forehead. He looked utterly done in, defeated by the road and the night. Mark's instincts, honed by years of city life and cautionary tales, screamed at him to drive on. Don't stop, don't engage. But another voice, a quieter one, whispered of kindness, of a time he himself had been stranded. Kindness said stop. Against his better judgment, a judgment that was now ringing alarm bells in his head, Mark unlocked the door. The decision was made in a heartbeat, but its consequences would stretch out into eternity. Cool night air rushed in, carrying the scent of damp earth and something else, something sharp and chemical.
"Evening," he said, his voice a low rasp. "Name's Sam. He needed a lift 15 miles up the road to Harpersville."
He let Sam in. The door closed with a heavy, final thud. The weight of that choice settled quickly, a cold stone in the pit of Mark's stomach. The car suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Sam spoke little, offering only clipped one-word answers to Mark's attempts at conversation. He seemed smaller in the car than he had on the road, hunched and withdrawn, his gaze fixed on some point beyond the windscreen. And that smell, a faint, acrid smell of petrol, clinging to the fabric of the boy's hoodie. Mark tried to dismiss it. Maybe his car broke down. The silence grew, punctuated only by Sam's short answers. The cheery radio broadcast that had been a comfort just minutes before now felt intrusive, so Mark turned it down until it was just a low, indecipherable murmur. He didn't fidget. He didn't shift his weight or look around. He sat with an unnatural stillness, as if he were a statue. He barely seemed to breathe. The 15 miles to Harpersville began to feel like a journey across a continent. Each mile marker that flashed past in the headlights was a milestone in a slow, creeping nightmare. Every half-remembered horror story about hitchhikers, every urban legend whispered among friends, returned at once, playing on a loop in Mark's mind. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles white.
"Could you pull over?" The suddenness of his voice, sharp and urgent after the long silence, made Mark jump.
They were miles from Harpersville, in a stretch of road shrouded by trees and a low-lying fog. Stopping here was a profoundly bad idea. But the thought of refusing, of what might happen if he said no, felt infinitely worse. The soft click of the door opening. Sam unfolded himself from the car and took deliberate, unhurried steps into the darkness, just beyond the reach of the headlights. He turned around and smiled, but it wasn't a smile of gratitude. It was a wide, fixed, unnatural grin. It was a grotesque mask, stretched taut over his features, or perhaps it was his face, twisted into a permanent, horrifying parody of joy. His eyes above the rictus grin were like cold, dark pools. He began to walk back towards the car, step by slow, measured step. The smile never moved. It was a dead thing on a living face. Something in his hand caught the faint moonlight, thin, silver, a wicked glint of reflected light. It was a knife, a slim, folding blade, now open and held loosely at his side. Every muscle in Mark's body seized. The impulse to slam the car into drive and flee was there, but his limbs wouldn't obey. He was frozen, a fly in amber. He could not move. The smiling man with the knife reached the passenger window, his distorted reflection joining him on the glass. He was so close now. Mark could see the cracks in the painted mask, or were they wrinkles?
"Give me your keys," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion, steady as stone.
Mark didn't argue. His trembling hand fumbled with the ignition. The keychain with its silly corporate logo rang like a tiny, frantic bell in the vast, silent night. His touch was cold as stone, a brief, chilling contact of flesh against flesh as he took the keys. He didn't run, he didn't get in the car. He simply took a step back, the grotesque smile still fixed on his face, and vanished into the deep shadow under the trees as if he were made of it. For a long moment, Mark just sat there, his heart hammering against his ribs. Then, with shaking hands, he found his phone and called 911, his voice a choked whisper. He waited, shaking, as the silence of the road pressed in on him again. The police found the footprints leading from the road into the woods. They faded near a small, freshly made camp under the trees. A sleeping bag, a nearly extinguished fire. There was no ID, no wallet, no extra clothes in the duffel bag. Just a stack of old, worn Polaroids scattered on the damp ground. They were portraits. Men, women, young, old. Each one pictured in the passenger seat of a car, their faces illuminated by the dashboard's glow. And in the corner of each photo, a date, handwritten in black ink. The last photo in the stack showed an empty passenger seat. It bore tonight's date. Mark never got his keys back. He never saw the smiling man again. But the police never found a body either. Sam, or whatever his name was, became another ghost on Route 9, a chilling story whispered by late-night travelers. A reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing on the road isn't what you might hit, but who you might meet. Story 2. The van at mile marker 47. The hour before dawn is a strange, liminal space. For two friends, Jenna and Paul, it was the final stretch of a long drive home. They were in their early 20s, filled with the easy confidence of youth, navigating the empty highways while the world slept. The conversation had dwindled to a comfortable silence, the only sounds the hum of the engine and the soft rock station playing quietly on the radio. They were tired, but content. Then, up ahead, they saw it. A plain white van, parked awkwardly under the oppressive shadow of a concrete overpass. It was the kind of vehicle you see everywhere and nowhere, utterly anonymous. Beside it, a small car, its hazard lights pulsing a weak, desperate rhythm. A classic breakdown. A man stood between the two vehicles, flagging them down. He looked to be in his 50s, with grey-streaked hair and a face etched with weariness, but his eyes seemed kind. Jenna slowed the car, a flicker of caution in her eyes. It was the dead of night on a lonely road. Paul, beside her, was more openly wary, his posture stiffening. Still, the scene looked innocent enough. The man explained his battery was dead. He had jumper cables but needed a jump, a simple request, a common courtesy between strangers on the road. After a moment's hesitation, Jenna agreed. As Paul popped their hood, the man worked with a quiet efficiency. He guided them calmly, his voice a low murmur. Jenna noticed his hands. They were clean, unusually so. No grease, no dirt, just the pristine skin of someone who hadn't been wrestling with a faulty engine. The silence under the concrete bridge felt heavy, amplifying the scrape and click of the cables. With a satisfied nod from the man, the stalled car's engine coughed and sputtered to life. The whole encounter took less than 10 minutes, a good deed done. The other driver gave a grateful wave and drove off. but the man in the white van just stood there. He didn't wave as they left, simply watched them go, a statue in the growing light. A few miles down the road, their own car's dashboard lights began to flicker. The engine sputtered, coughed once, then died completely. At the same moment, a heavy, unnatural fog rolled in, seemingly from nowhere, engulfing the highway and swallowing the world outside their windows. Paul checked under the hood. Everything looked fine. The battery was connected, the engine clean, but the car was dead. They were stranded. A profound sense of isolation set in. They were alone and helpless, adrift in a sea of white mist. Then they heard it, the low rumble of an engine. Headlights cut through the gloom. It was the van. It pulled up alongside them, and the same man got out. But his face was different now. The kind weariness was gone, replaced by a blank, neutral expression.
Looks like you've got trouble. I can give you a lift.
No thank you. We'll call for a tow.
But there was no signal. The offer hung in the air, cold and unwelcome. Then the man did something utterly bizarre. Without another word, he walked to the back of their car and opened the boot. Jenna and Paul sat frozen, watching in the rearview mirror as he began searching through their luggage, not frantically, but with a strange, deliberate purpose. He ignored their bags, their coats, everything of value. Then from a small side pocket of a duffel bag, he produced a small old silver flask. It was a forgotten keepsake of Jenna's grandfather. He walked back to her window and held it out. His voice was a command, not a suggestion. Confused, she took it. He then placed a hand on the hood of the car. 2 soft taps, the sound muffled by the fog. Then the car lurched to life, the engine humming perfectly, as if nothing had ever been wrong. The man gave them one long, unreadable look, then got back in his van and vanished into the mist. Shaking, Jenna looked at the flask. It was old, clearly valuable. She'd never paid it much mind before. She unscrewed the cap. It wasn't empty. Tucked inside was a small, faded photograph. It was of a young boy, no older than 10, and his eyes, they were the same tired, kind eyes of the man from the roadside. They aren't the only ones. Over the years, other travelers tell of a mysterious white van at mile marker 47, a strange figure who offers help in the most unusual ways. Sometimes a car is fixed. Sometimes a lost item is returned. Always, odd tokens are left behind, and a forgotten keepsake is given back, as if settling an unknown debt. There is no official record of the van, no registration, no trace. It exists only in these fleeting encounters. Is he a guardian angel, a ghost bound to the asphalt, or something stranger? A collector of memories, haunting the dawn. Jenna and Paul did not look back. They didn't dare. But the gift, the impossible memory, stayed with them. Some roads give, and some roads take, and some keep their secrets buried forever beneath concrete and fog. Remember mile marker 47. If the van finds you and a trade is offered, choose carefully what you are willing to receive. Story 3. The radio voice on State Route 12. Helen Gable was a creature of the night, not by choice, but by habit. Her solace was found on the lonely, rain-soaked asphalt of State Route 12, a serpentine ribbon of road that snaked through miles of dark, sleeping countryside. Tonight the rain was a relentless deluge, a curtain of water that turned the world outside into a blurry, abstract painting. No one knew she was out. These drives were her secret, a quiet rebellion against the noise of her life. The storm mangled the radio reception, reducing it to a cacophony of static and ghostly whispers of distant broadcasts. She fiddled with the dial, searching for a signal, any human sound to cut through the isolation. Then a voice sliced through the noise. It wasn't a DJ, not a news anchor. It was calm, measured, and unnervingly clear. And it spoke. Her full name.
Helen Gable.
A cold dread, sharp and immediate, seized her. How? Who? The voice spoke again, its tone leaving no room for argument.
Pull over at the red mailbox.
A primal instinct screamed at her to stop, to obey. but a stronger, more rational instinct urged her to flee, to press the accelerator to the floor and never look back. She hesitated, her foot hovering over the brake as the mailbox slid past her window.
Good. Do not get out. Do not look behind you. Keep driving.
Relief warred with terror. The voice wasn't a threat, but a guide. It gave precise directions, turn by turn, landmark by forgotten landmark. It guided her 2 miles down a turnoff she hadn't taken in years, toward a lonely, forgotten gas station she barely remembered existed. She obeyed, compelled by the sheer, unshakable authority in that voice. It felt safer to listen than to disobey. She pulled into a small island of light in a drowned world. The station was exactly as the voice had described. Silent. Still. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting long, distorted reflections on the pooled water. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She scanned the empty forecourt, the darkened convenience store, searching for any sign of life, any explanation. There was nothing.
You are safe now. Stay where you are until I tell you.
And then, as suddenly as it began, everything went quiet. The voice was gone, replaced by the soft hiss of static. It never spoke again. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, with the last sliver of her phone's battery, she called for help, her voice trembling as she relayed the impossible story. The dispatcher informed her a patrol unit was already in the area, hunting for a reckless driver reported near State Route 12. They found her, huddled in her car under the buzzing lights of the abandoned station. A search of the area revealed something chilling. Near the red mailbox she had passed, they found fresh footprints in the mud. Tire tracks, not her own, were pressed deep into the soft shoulder, leading away. Someone had been waiting for her. The watcher simply walked off and vanished. And under a nearby bench, half hidden by wet leaves, they found a small, weathered microcassette recorder. Back at the station, they played it. The same calm, authoritative male voice filled the quiet room. It spoke her name. It gave her route, every turn, every landmark, a perfect pre-recorded script of her salvation. But the most disturbing detail was the label on the cassette, written in faded ink. The date was exactly 10 years to the day before this night. Helen moved away not long after. She sold her car and never drove alone at night again. No explanation ever came. The identity of the voice, the reason for the decade-old recording, the person waiting in the rain, all became ghosts absorbed into local legend. The road keeps its secrets. It watches, it waits, and sometimes, just sometimes, it shares them. Which roads will you take tonight? Remember Route 9. Remember Mile 47. Remember State Route 12. Most of all, remember what you cannot see. If you feel not alone when you are, perhaps you aren't. Drive safe, keep your doors locked, keep the radio on, and if a voice knows your name, do exactly as it says. Good night.